Imagine a silence so profound, it presses against your eardrums, a heavy cloak woven from unspoken truths and shattered expectations. It's the kind of silence that precedes a storm, a moment suspended between what was and what can never be again. Now, picture yourself at the heart of that stillness, standing at the precipice of a revelation that will unravel lives, expose the deepest betrayals, and redefine everything you thought you knew about love, family, and trust. What if the person you mourned, the one you believed was lost forever, suddenly materialized, a ghost made flesh, in the very place where their memory was being erased? What if their return wasn't a miracle, but a meticulously planned act of justice, a quiet reckoning against those who profited from their supposed demise? This isn't just a story of a woman returning from the dead. It's a chilling exploration of how far greed can push human hearts, and the terrifying power of a secret identity finally brought to light. Prepare yourself, because the truth, when it finally emerges, will leave you breathless, questioning every assumption you hold dear. The air in the courtroom was thick, not just with the usual scent of old paper and stale coffee, but with a palpable sense of anticipation, a hushed excitement that vibrated beneath the surface of polite decorum. I stood just inside the heavy oak doors, my hand still resting on the cool, polished wood, a silent sentinel observing the scene unfold before me. Every detail was etched into my memory with the precision of a diamond cutting glass. The muted sunlight filtering through the tall, arched windows, casting long, dusty shadows across the worn carpet. The rhythmic hum of the air conditioning, a monotonous counterpoint to the frantic beat of my own heart. My gaze swept across the room, landing first on the judge, a man whose face was a roadmap of countless legal battles, his expression a practiced mask of weary impartiality. His gavel lay dormant, a silent promise of finality, on the dark wood of his bench. Then, my eyes found them. My husband, Arthur, sat at the plaintiff's table, his posture radiating an almost unbearable smugness, a quiet triumph that made my stomach clench. Beside him, his sister Eleanor clutched a tissue, dabbing at eyes that, even from this distance, I could tell were dry. Her performance of grief was as transparent as a pane of glass, a thinly veiled act designed to elicit sympathy from anyone foolish enough to believe it. Arthur, however, made no such pretense. A faint, almost imperceptible smile played on his lips, a cruel twist that spoke volumes of his inner satisfaction. He leaned back in his chair, a picture of relaxed confidence, as if this entire proceeding was merely a tedious formality, a final administrative hurdle before he could claim what he already considered his. They had no idea, not the slightest inkling, that the carefully constructed illusion they had woven was about to unravel, thread by agonizing thread, right before their very eyes. 2 months earlier, my world had been a stark contrast to this sterile courtroom drama. I was miles away, nestled in the quiet solitude of my remote cabin, a sanctuary carved out of the wilderness, far from the prying eyes and deceptive smiles of civilization. My life there was one of deliberate simplicity, a deliberate escape from the complexities and betrayals that had once defined my existence. I spent my days tending to my garden, hiking the winding trails, and losing myself in the pages of old books, finding solace in the quiet rhythm of nature. It was a life I had meticulously built, brick by emotional brick, after the devastating events that had forced me to disappear, to become a ghost in the lives of those who claimed to love me. The only connection to the outside world was a secure, encrypted satellite link, a lifeline to a past I thought I had successfully buried. It was through this link that the alert came, a stark digital intrusion into my peaceful existence. A Priority 1 flag, bypassing all normal channels, blinked urgently on my private terminal. It was from my former handler, a man I knew only as the Architect, a figure whose communications were always precise, devoid of emotion, and invariably significant. The message wasn't about a mission, not in the traditional sense. It was a domestic legal notification, flagged by an automated system that monitored my civilian identity for anomalies. A petition had been filed in my home state's probate court. A petition to have me, Amelia Vance, declared legally dead. The words swam before my eyes, blurring into an incomprehensible jumble of betrayal and disbelief. I read the names of the petitioners over and over again, the cold, hard reality of their actions slowly seeping into my consciousness. Arthur Vance, my husband. Eleanor Vance, his sister. The stated purpose was even more chilling: to dissolve the trust my beloved grandmother had left for me, to liquidate every last cent. The initial shock was quickly replaced by a chilling clarity, a cold, hard resolve that settled deep within my bones. This wasn't just a greedy, desperate grab for money, though that was certainly a part of it. This was a calculated attempt to erase my legal existence, to wipe me from the records as if I had never been. They thought they were cashing out a ghost's inheritance, funding their lavish lifestyles with money they believed was rightfully theirs. They had no idea, not the slightest clue, that they had just tripped a wire, not of a local court, but of a far more intricate and powerful system, one that operated in the shadows, guided by principles they couldn't even begin to comprehend. To truly understand the quiet storm that was brewing, the meticulous plan I was about to unleash, you have to understand the two lives they had forced me to live, the two versions of Amelia Vance that existed in the world. To Arthur and his family, I was a known quantity, predictable, quiet, and utterly unremarkable. They had constructed a version of me that was comfortable for them, a person who required no attention, who had no ambitions that could possibly overshadow Arthur's burgeoning career or Eleanor's endless social engagements. They called me Millie, a diminutive, almost dismissive nickname, a constant reminder of their perception of me as small, insignificant, easily overlooked. In their minds, I was content with my quiet life, tucked away in the background, a supporting character in their grand narrative. This fiction was never more real to them than during the last family gathering I ever attended, nearly 5 years ago, a memory that still pricked at the edges of my consciousness like a dull thorn. The entire evening had been an altar built to Arthur's latest business venture, a dubious real estate scheme that he was convinced would make him a millionaire overnight. My father-in-law, a retired judge who still reveled in the glow of his minor local celebrity, stood to make a toast. His voice boomed across the elegant dining room, celebrating Arthur's unflinching ambition and entrepreneurial spirit. I watched him, and in that moment, I didn't just see the toast. I saw the years of quiet support I had offered, the late nights I had spent helping him with his business plans, the sacrifices I had made for his dreams. I saw the dismissive wave of his hand when I mentioned my own aspirations, my passion for sustainable architecture, my desire to build something meaningful. When the applause for Arthur finally died down, I made a quiet attempt to connect, to share a small victory of my own. I mentioned that I had been awarded a highly competitive grant for an innovative eco-housing project. Arthur simply patted my hand, a gesture of pure, condescending dismissal. "That's nice, darling," he said, his eyes already scanning the room for someone more important to talk to. "More time for your little hobbies, I suppose." That was their reality. In that world, I was a footnote, a pleasant accessory, easily forgotten. The truth, however, was a world away, and it wasn't quiet or insignificant at all. It was lived in the silent, humming nerve centers of global intelligence, in the classified shadows where the real battles were fought. I was not just Amelia Vance, the quiet wife. I was Echo, a deep-cover operative for a clandestine intelligence unit, my specialty being the infiltration of complex digital networks and the neutralization of high-level threats. My call sign was a whisper, a ghost in the machine, and my work involved hunting down threats that could destabilize entire nations before anyone even knew they were under attack. The contrast was a dizzying gulf that I navigated every single day. One evening, I was being condescended to about my little hobbies. The next, I was the lead analyst in a command hub, the only calm voice in a room on the verge of chaos, guiding a team through a cyber attack that threatened to cripple critical infrastructure. An alarm was screaming through the system, a zero-day exploit of unknown origin tearing through our national power grid. The air was thick with tension, the faces of my team illuminated by the frantic glow of their monitors. But for me, that's when the world slowed down. The noise faded, and all I saw was the data, a complex tapestry of code and intent. "It's a polymorphic payload," I said, my voice steady over the comm system, cutting through the rising panic. "It's rewriting its own signature every time we try to isolate it. We can't chase it. We have to cut it off." I took a breath, the weight of the decision settling on me. the lives of millions hanging in the balance. I'm recommending a full network state revert. We roll the entire system back to the last clean snapshot. Authorization Echo 7. There was a beat of silence, the kind where you can feel a dozen careers hanging in the balance, the kind that stretches into an eternity. Then, the architect's voice came through my earpiece, calm and decisive. Execute, Echo. The command was given, the protocol was run, and the threat was neutralized. Afterwards, the architect found me by the coffee station, his gaze piercing, yet filled with an unspoken understanding. He just looked at me for a moment and said, "Good work, Echo. You just saved the grid." That was my other life. A world of immense responsibility and quiet, earned respect. The validation I received in that single sentence was more than Arthur and his family had given me in my entire life. I thought of a phone call I'd had with my mother-in-law years before, when I gently questioned why they were constantly bailing out Arthur's failed ventures, while I was still paying off student loans from my architectural studies. Her answer had been soft, patient, and utterly devastating. "Arthur is just so present, Amelia," she'd explained, as if I were a distant relative. "His business needs are tangible, right here in front of us. You're so independent. You never ask for anything. We just assume you're fine." Her words weren't meant to be cruel, which somehow made it worse. My strength, my self-sufficiency, had rendered me invisible. They didn't have to worry about me, so they simply didn't. For years I accepted that they would never understand my world, never truly see me. But by trying to declare me dead, they weren't just disrespecting my life. They were trying to erase it, to profit from my non-existence. They only understood the language of the law, of official documents and pronouncements. So I decided it was time to speak to them in the only language they would ever truly comprehend. The emotional part of me, the part that was still a wife, a daughter-in-law, wanted to scream. It wanted to call them, to demand an explanation, to confront the sheer, breathtaking cruelty of their actions. But that part of me had been silenced and ignored for years. It was the other part, the professional, Echo, who took control. And Echo knew that an emotional confrontation was a losing battle. It was messy, unpredictable, and it would give them the satisfaction of my pain. No, this would not be a family argument. This would be a protocol enforcement. Their petition was a legal maneuver, executed with false documents and feigned grief. My response would be a counter-move, just as formal, but backed by a power they couldn't even begin to imagine. I didn't need to hire a private investigator or a lawyer. I had the full resources of my agency at my fingertips. I tasked our legal liaison to pull the complete probate court filing, a simple request that was fulfilled within the hour. On my secure tablet, I scrolled through the documents, my face impassive, a mask of professional detachment. I read the sworn affidavits signed by Arthur and Eleanor. They had crafted a detailed, heartbreaking narrative of my disappearance, detailing fabricated searches and tearful dead ends. They had sworn under penalty of perjury that they had exhausted all means of finding me. The words were a fiction, a cruel fabrication, but their signatures were a fact, a cold, hard piece of evidence. That was all I needed. I presented the entire file to the architect. He read through it in silence, his expression hardening with every page. When he was done, he looked up at me, and his anger was a quiet, controlled fire. It wasn't just for me. It was fury at the sheer recklessness of their actions, the way they had blindly stumbled into a world of shadows and risked exposing a protected asset for something as trivial as money. He didn't hesitate. He authorized what we came to call Operation Phoenix, a formal protocol for just this kind of situation. The plan was brutally simple, a 3-step surgical strike designed to expose their lies and deliver an undeniable truth. First, we would not contest the hearing. We would let them walk into that courtroom, brimming with their false confidence, and commit to their lies in front of a judge, sealing their own fate with every perjured word. Second, my official reactivation directive, a document of immense federal authority, would be couriered to the courthouse under federal seal, timed to arrive at the precise moment before the judge's final signature. And third, the architect himself would attend the hearing in civilian clothes, a silent observer from the shadows, whose mere presence alone would change the entire dynamic of the room, transforming a local probate court into a designated national security venue. Arthur, with his connections and his retired judge father, thought he knew every judge and clerk in the county. He believed he was manipulating a local system he understood, a small pond where he was a big fish. He had no idea he was a pawn in a federal operation, and that the courtroom he walked into was about to become the stage for a reckoning he could never have foreseen. The stage was set, the players were in place, and the curtain was about to rise on a truth that would shatter their carefully constructed world. The probate courtroom was exactly as I had imagined it, a microcosm of their world, small, stuffy, and smelling faintly of old paper and stale ambition. The air was thick with a kind of dreary importance, a self-congratulatory hum that only those deeply entrenched in local power structures could truly appreciate. My husband, Arthur, and his sister, Eleanor, along with their impeccably dressed lawyer, were seated at the plaintiff's table, radiating an aura of bored confidence. To them, this was just a final piece of administrative theater, a tedious but necessary step before they could finally access the money they already considered theirs, the inheritance my grandmother had so lovingly set aside for me. Eleanor was idly scrolling through her phone, a picture of detached disinterest, while Arthur leaned back in his chair, that same smug little smile playing on his lips. He was in his element, a small man in a small room, about to leverage the system he thought he knew so well, a system he believed he had mastered. They looked utterly relaxed, completely oblivious to the impending storm. They had no idea they were sitting on a ticking time bomb, a carefully calibrated device set to detonate at the precise moment of their perceived victory. The judge, a man whose face was now a study in mild impatience, was shuffling through the final document, his pen hovering over the signature line that would legally erase my existence, turning Amelia Vance into a mere historical footnote. That was my cue. The heavy oak doors at the back of the courtroom, the very doors I had been leaning against, swung open with a soft, almost imperceptible groan. I stepped inside, my movements deliberate, measured, each footfall falling into the thick, expectant silence. I didn't rush, didn't make a sound beyond the soft rustle of my clothes. I walked to the back wall, a silent figure emerging from the shadows, and simply stood there, my hands clasped loosely in front of me, my gaze unwavering. I watched them, every fiber of my being focused on their reactions, anticipating the moment their carefully constructed reality would shatter. Their lawyer was the first to see me, his smooth, rehearsed words, a practiced eulogy for a life he never knew, faltered mid-sentence. His eyes, which had been fixed on the judge, widened almost imperceptibly, and he stopped talking, his mouth hanging slightly agape. That's when Eleanor looked up from her phone, annoyed at the interruption, a frown creasing her perfectly smooth brow. Her expression of irritation melted, slowly at first, then rapidly, into a mask of pure, uncomprehending shock. The color drained from her face, leaving it a ghostly white. Then, Arthur's head turned, drawn by the sudden, unnatural stillness in the room. His smug smile vanished, replaced by a rigid, frozen confusion, a flicker of disbelief that quickly morphed into something akin to terror. Finally, his eyes met mine, and that was when the silent, collective gasp seemed to suck all the remaining air out of the room, leaving a vacuum of stunned silence. The entire carefully constructed narrative of their grief and loss, the elaborate lie they had told themselves and the court, shattered in the space of a single heartbeat. The judge, confused by the sudden, profound silence, looked up from his papers, his pen still hovering over the signature line. He followed their collective gaze to the back of the room, to where I stood, a living apparition. His jaw went slack. He stared, and for a moment, the only sound was the frantic, yet steady and calm beat of my own heart, a drum against the silence. He leaned into the microphone, his voice a strained whisper, amplified by the technology, cutting through the stillness like a knife. "You said she was dead." The words, echoing from my memory of the initial alert, now resonated in the real, tangible space of the courtroom, a damning indictment. Before Arthur could force his frozen lips to form a response, before he could conjure another lie or a desperate plea, another player entered the game. A bailiff, who had been standing impassively by the door, a silent fixture of the courtroom, moved with a newfound purpose. He walked directly to the bench, his steps firm and deliberate, and placed a large, sealed manila envelope in front of the judge. As he did, he gave a subtle, almost imperceptible nod towards the public gallery, towards the back of the courtroom, where the architect was sitting, a silent, anonymous figure in a simple, unassuming suit. The architect's presence was a promise, a guarantee that the full weight of a system far beyond their comprehension was now in this tiny, stuffy room. The judge looked from the bailiff to the architect, then down at the envelope. His brow furrowed in confusion. He tore it open, the crisp sound of paper ripping echoing loudly in the sudden silence. I watched his face as he read, every subtle shift in his expression, a testament to the power of the words contained within. I saw the flicker of confusion turn into dawning comprehension, and then into something else entirely, a deep, profound gravity, a recognition of an authority far superior to his own. He was no longer just a local probate judge dealing with a family squabble, a petty inheritance dispute. He was an officer of the court who had just been handed a federal directive, a document that superseded all local jurisdiction. He carefully placed the document down on his desk, squared his shoulders, and when he looked up, his demeanor was utterly transformed. His eyes, once weary, now held a steely resolve. His voice, when he spoke, was no longer tired or quiet. It boomed with an authority that seemed to shake the very walls of the courtroom, reverberating through the stunned silence. "This hearing is suspended," he declared. His eyes locked on Arthur and Eleanor, who now sat frozen, their faces pale with terror. "Effective immediately, a federal investigation is now pending into potential felony perjury, conspiracy to commit fraud, and the compromising of a protected government asset." Each word was a hammer blow, striking at the very foundation of their carefully constructed deception. Perjury, fraud, compromising a protected asset. Arthur flinched as if he'd been physically struck, his body recoiling from the verbal assault. Eleanor's face was a mess of tears and terror, her carefully applied makeup streaking down her cheeks. The judge wasn't finished. His voice, though still authoritative, softened slightly as he continued, his gaze sweeping across the room, encompassing everyone present. "Your signed affidavits have been entered as evidence in that investigation. You will surrender your phones and your passports to the U.S. Marshals who are waiting for you outside this courtroom." As if on cue, two tall, stern-faced individuals in dark suits stepped through the doors behind me, their presence radiating an undeniable authority. The trap was sprung. The escape routes were gone. Arthur and Eleanor were cornered, caught in the unforgiving machinery of a power they had never even known existed, a power they had so recklessly provoked. The judge then turned his gaze to me, his expression softening with a deference that was utterly foreign in that place, a respect that was both earned and profound. His voice was quiet again, but now it held a deep, unwavering respect. "Ma'am," he said, his eyes meeting mine, "your transport is here." My husband and his sister had spent my whole life dismissing my existence, reducing me to a convenient fiction, a background character in their self-serving drama. In the end, it only took one sealed envelope and 5 words, "protected government asset," for them to finally understand how much I mattered, how profoundly they had underestimated me. I didn't look back. I heard the commotion behind me as the courtroom doors swung shut, a muffled sound of panicked voices and the firm, low tones of the marshals. But I kept walking, my footsteps echoing in the empty marble hallway, each one carrying me further away from the wreckage of the life I'd been born into, the life they had tried to erase, and back toward the one I had meticulously built, the one where my true worth was recognized and respected. A security detail was waiting for me at the bottom of the steps, 2 quiet professionals whose presence was both a comfort and a stark reminder of the world I actually belonged to. They opened the door to a black sedan, and as I slid inside, I knew I was leaving the rest to a different kind of system, the cold, impartial machinery of federal justice. Arthur and Eleanor had made their choices, driven by greed and a shocking disregard for my very existence. Now, the consequences would simply unspool, without any further input from me, without any emotional entanglement. My journey back to my true self, to Echo, was complete, but the ripple effects of their betrayal were just beginning to spread, touching lives they could never have imagined. What would become of them, caught in the unforgiving grip of a system they had so foolishly challenged? And what new challenges awaited me, now that my 2 worlds had so violently collided? The answers I knew would unfold in due time, but for now, the silence of the sedan was a welcome balm, a promise of a future forged on my own terms. 1 year later, the stale air of that courtroom was a distant, faded memory, replaced by the crisp, clean scent of ozone and the quiet hum of advanced technology. I stood in a state-of-the-art briefing room, a vast holographic map of global data traffic glowing in the low light before me, a mesmerizing tapestry of information constantly shifting and reforming. I was no longer just an operative, a ghost in the machine. I was section chief, leading my own cyber intelligence unit, a position I had earned through countless sleepless nights, impossible decisions, and an unwavering commitment to protecting the unseen. The faces looking back at me were not family by blood, but they were my team, a collection of the brightest, most dedicated minds I had ever known, each one a specialist in their field, united by a shared purpose. They didn't know me as Amelia Vance, the quiet, overlooked wife. They knew me as Echo, the leader who could see patterns in the chaos, the calm voice in the storm, the strategist who always found a way. They respected me for my decisions under pressure, for my ability to anticipate threats, and for the quiet confidence I had in them, a confidence that was always reciprocated. This was my real family, a community forged not by obligation or the accident of birth, but by mutual trust, shared sacrifice, and a silent, profound duty to something larger than ourselves. Here, respect was the baseline. Competence was the only currency that mattered, and my voice, once dismissed, now commanded attention. The news about Arthur and Eleanor came through official channels, a dry, concise summary and a legal report that landed on my secure terminal. It was devoid of emotion, a stark contrast to the raw, visceral feelings that had once consumed me. They had managed to avoid prison time, a small victory for their lawyer who had argued for leniency based on their clean records and Arthur's past community service, a facade he had meticulously maintained for years. But the consequences, though not incarceration, were still absolute and devastating. They were hit with staggering fines that wiped them out financially, forcing them to sell off assets they had once flaunted, stripping away the very symbols of the status they so desperately craved. And each of them now had a felony fraud conviction on their permanent record, a brand that would follow them, tainting every future endeavor, every attempt to regain their former standing. Arthur's public reputation, the thing he had spent his entire life curating, meticulously polishing, was utterly destroyed overnight, crumbling into dust with the weight of his own deceit. The local papers, once filled with glowing reports of his entrepreneurial spirit, now carried headlines detailing his fall from grace, a public humiliation he could never escape. The trust fund my beloved grandmother had established for me, the very thing that had triggered this whole catastrophe, the root of their greed and betrayal, was finally released entirely to my control. For a while, I wasn't sure what to do with it. The money felt tainted, sullied by their avarice, a constant reminder of the pain they had inflicted. It sat in a separate account, an untouchable sum, a symbol of a past I was trying to leave behind. Then, one quiet evening, while looking at an old photograph of my grandmother, her eyes sparkling with kindness and wisdom, a profound realization dawned on me. I had an opportunity, not to reward myself, not to indulge in luxury, but to reclaim a legacy, to transform something born of malice into a force for good. I decided to use the entire fund to establish the Vance Legacy Grant for Ethical Innovation, an endowment designed to support young, brilliant minds who wanted to use their skills and talents to protect people, to build a better world, not to exploit or deceive them. It was a quiet act of defiance, a powerful statement. I was taking my family name, which Arthur and Eleanor had tarnished with their actions, and attaching it to something noble, something that would honor the memory of the grandmother who had truly believed in me, who had seen my worth long before anyone else. It was a final, quiet correction of the record, done on my own terms, a testament to my resilience. My legacy would not be defined by their choices, by their greed or their betrayal. It would be defined by mine, by the positive impact I chose to create. One evening, while reviewing a complex threat assessment report, my mind fully immersed in the intricate dance of global cyber warfare, an email notification popped up on my screen. The sender's name made my breath catch for just a second, a faint echo of a past life, a ghost of a memory I thought I had fully exorcised. Eleanor. The message was short, a pathetic little masterpiece of manipulation. dripping with feigned desperation and thinly veiled entitlement. "Amelia," it read, "you were always the smart one. I know you'll do the right thing. We're in a terrible situation, and Arthur is just lost without his connections. Please, you're the only one who can help us." There was no apology, no acknowledgement of what they'd done, no hint of remorse for the pain they had caused. Just a link to a crowdfunding page for their legal fees, a desperate plea for financial assistance, framed as an appeal to my supposed intelligence and compassion. It was a final, desperate attempt to pull me back into their orbit, to leverage the ghost of our past relationship for their own gain. I stared at the words, the glowing text on the screen, and I waited. I waited to feel something. Anything. Anger, perhaps, a surge of the old resentment that had once simmered beneath the surface of my quiet demeanor. Pity, maybe, for their self-inflicted downfall, for the pathetic state they had reduced themselves to. A ghost of old pain, a flicker of the hurt they had so carelessly inflicted. But there was nothing, just a profound and peaceful emptiness, a quiet calm that settled over me like a gentle blanket. The emotional hold they'd had on me for decades, the invisible chains that had bound me to their expectations and their dismissals, was finally, completely gone. It was as if a heavy weight had been lifted, leaving behind a lightness I hadn't realized I was missing. I didn't reply. I didn't even hesitate. I simply moved my cursor over the message and clicked delete, watching it vanish into the digital ether, a final severance. My peace was my own, hard-won and fiercely protected, and it was no longer for sale, no longer subject to their manipulations or their demands. My husband and his sister tried to declare me dead, to claim a legacy they hadn't earned, to profit from my supposed non-existence. I had to become a ghost in their world, to disappear and then reappear with the full force of my true identity, to learn that a true legacy isn't what people say about you when you're gone, or the money you leave behind. It's what your actions protect while you're still here, the positive impact you create, the lives you touch, the principles you uphold. It's about building something real, something meaningful, something that stands the test of time, rather than chasing fleeting recognition or ill-gotten gains. This journey, though born of betrayal, had ultimately led me to a deeper understanding of myself, of my purpose, and of the true meaning of belonging. It had shown me that true strength lies not in being seen by those who refuse to see, but in embracing your authentic self, even if it means walking away from the past. If you've ever had to prove your worth to people who refuse to see it, if you've ever felt invisible in the very place you should have been cherished, then you understand the quiet power of finding your own voice, of building your own sanctuary. This community, this space we share, is where your expertise is always recognized, where your story is always valued. We believe in the strength of shared experiences, in the power of connection. So, if this story resonated with you, if it stirred something deep within your spirit, I invite you to share your own reflections below. What challenges have you overcome? How did you find your true path when others tried to define it for you? Your insights are invaluable, and your stories inspire us all. And if you're new here, if you've just stumbled upon our corner of the internet, know that you are welcome. This is a place where authenticity thrives, where every voice matters. Consider subscribing, joining our growing family, and becoming a part of something truly special. We're always looking for new perspectives, new stories to explore, so feel free to suggest topics that ignite your curiosity. What mysteries of the human spirit, what untold tales of resilience would you like us to delve into next? The echoes of that courtroom drama, though faded, served as a constant, subtle reminder of the profound shift in my life, a demarcation line between the Amelia I once was and the Echo I had become. It wasn't just a change in title or responsibility. It was a fundamental reordering of my internal landscape, a shedding of old skins and the embrace of a truer, more resilient self. My days were now filled with challenges that truly mattered, problems that demanded every ounce of my intellect and intuition, far removed from the petty squabbles and superficial concerns that had once dominated my existence. The holographic map in the briefing room, with its intricate web of data streams, was a far more honest reflection of reality than any family portrait or social gathering had ever been. Here, in this world of silent battles and digital frontiers, my contributions were not just acknowledged. They were essential, critical to the safety and stability of countless lives. The weight of that responsibility was immense, yet it was a burden I carried with a profound sense of purpose, a stark contrast to the suffocating lightness of being invisible. My team, a diverse group of brilliant minds from various backgrounds, each with their own unique expertise, had become the family I never truly had. There was Dr. Eris Thorne, a cybersecurity prodigy whose mind worked at lightning speed, capable of dissecting complex algorithms with an almost artistic flair. Then there was Lena Petrova, a former linguist turned data analyst, whose ability to spot anomalies in vast datasets was uncanny, almost prescient, and Marcus Mac Chen, our lead engineer, whose calm demeanor belied a fierce dedication and an unparalleled skill in building and maintaining the intricate systems we relied upon. We operated as a single, cohesive unit, a symphony of specialized talents, each member trusting the others implicitly, knowing that our collective strength was far greater than any individual brilliance. Our conversations were sharp, focused, and always respectful, a refreshing change from the veiled criticisms and dismissive tones I had grown accustomed to in my past life. Here, every idea was considered, every perspective valued, and every success was a shared triumph. The transition hadn't been without its internal struggles, of course. Even after the courtroom confrontation, after seeing Arthur and Eleanor face the consequences of their actions, there were lingering shadows, faint whispers of doubt, and old hurts that occasionally surfaced. The human heart, I discovered, is a complex and resilient thing, but it also carries the scars of its past, even when the wounds have healed. There were moments, late at night in my quiet apartment, when a memory would surface, a shared laugh with Arthur from happier times, a seemingly innocent conversation with Eleanor, and a pang of something akin to sadness would momentarily pierce the armor I had so carefully constructed. It wasn't regret, not truly, but a quiet acknowledgement of what could have been, of the potential for connection that had been so brutally severed by greed and betrayal. But these moments were fleeting, quickly overshadowed by the profound sense of peace and purpose that now defined my life. I had learned that forgiveness, in its truest form, wasn't about absolving them of their actions, but about freeing myself from the emotional prison they had built around me. My work, in many ways, became my meditation, my anchor in a world that could often feel chaotic and unpredictable. Each new threat, each complex puzzle we unraveled, was an opportunity to apply my skills, to make a tangible difference. One particular case stands out in my memory, a global ransomware attack that threatened to cripple hospitals and emergency services across several continents. The perpetrators were elusive, their digital footprints expertly masked, their motives shrouded in a web of proxies and false flags. The pressure was immense, the stakes impossibly high. I remember standing before the holographic map, the faces of my team looking to me for direction, their exhaustion palpable, yet their resolve unwavering. "We need to think like them," I had said, my voice calm despite the urgency of the situation. "We need to anticipate their next move, not just react to their last." We worked tirelessly for 72 hours straight, fueled by coffee and an unyielding determination. Eris discovered a subtle anomaly in the encryption key, a tiny digital fingerprint that pointed to a specific, obscure hacking collective. Lena, using her linguistic skills, analyzed their past communications, uncovering a pattern of behavior, a psychological profile that gave us an edge. Mac, with his engineering genius, devised a counter-exploit, a digital scalpel that could sever their connection to the infected systems without causing further damage. It was a symphony of coordinated effort, a testament to the power of a truly unified team. When the final command was given, when the ransomware was neutralized and the systems restored, a collective sigh of relief swept through the room. The architect, who had been observing from a secure console, simply nodded, a rare, almost imperceptible smile gracing his lips. "Another one for the win, Echo," he had said, his voice quiet but filled with genuine approval. In those moments, surrounded by my team, knowing the impact of our work, I felt a sense of belonging and accomplishment that transcended any past validation I had ever sought. The Vance Legacy Grant for Ethical Innovation, my grandmother's transformed inheritance, began to take shape, becoming another source of profound satisfaction. We established a rigorous selection process, seeking out young innovators who demonstrated not only exceptional technical prowess, but also a deep ethical compass, a genuine desire to use technology for the betterment of humanity. The first cohort of grant recipients was a truly inspiring group. A young woman developing AI to detect early signs of environmental degradation, a team creating secure, decentralized communication platforms for vulnerable communities, and a brilliant young man designing accessible cybersecurity tools for small businesses. I met with them regularly, not as a benefactor, but as a mentor, sharing my experiences, offering guidance, and witnessing firsthand the incredible potential of their work. Seeing their passion, their dedication, their unwavering belief in a brighter future filled me with a sense of hope that had once felt elusive. It was a tangible way to honor my grandmother's memory, to ensure that her legacy of kindness and foresight lived on, not through material wealth, but through meaningful impact. It was a quiet revolution, transforming a painful past into a powerful future. My life now was a tapestry woven with threads of purpose, respect, and genuine connection. The old wounds had healed, leaving behind not bitterness, but wisdom. The emotional freedom I had gained was immeasurable, allowing me to fully embrace the woman I was meant to be, unburdened by the expectations or judgments of others. Arthur and Eleanor, with their self-inflicted wounds and their desperate pleas, were merely distant echoes, fading into the background of a life that was now vibrant and full. I had learned that true strength isn't about how loudly you can shout, but about how quietly you can build, how resiliently you can rise, and how authentically you can live. The journey had been arduous, filled with unexpected turns and profound betrayals, but it had ultimately led me home, not to a physical place, but to a state of being, a profound sense of peace within myself. And as I looked out at the holographic map, at the endless possibilities and challenges it represented, I knew that my story was far from over. What new frontiers awaited Echo? What other silent battles would I be called upon to fight? And what further depths of human resilience would I discover along the way? The future, I realized, was an open book, waiting for the next chapter to be written, a chapter I was now fully prepared to author. The quiet hum of the server racks in our secure facility often felt like the heartbeat of my new existence, a steady rhythm that underscored the profound purpose I had found. It was a stark contrast to the hollow silence that had once permeated my life with Arthur, a silence filled with unspoken resentments and unfulfilled expectations. Here, every hum, every blinking light, every line of code represented a layer of protection, a shield against the unseen threats that constantly sought to disrupt the delicate balance of our interconnected world. My office, a minimalist space with a panoramic view of the city lights, was not just a workplace. It was a sanctuary where complex problems were dissected, where strategies were forged, and where the future was, in many ways, safeguarded. The weight of this responsibility was immense, yet it was a weight I carried with a profound sense of honor, a stark difference from the crushing burden of being constantly overlooked. My team continued to be a source of immense pride and unwavering support. We had recently taken on a particularly challenging case, a sophisticated disinformation campaign targeting critical public health initiatives across several developing nations. The goal was to sow distrust, to create chaos, and ultimately, to destabilize entire regions. It was a battle not just of technology, but of hearts and minds, an insidious attack on the very fabric of truth. Eris, with his unparalleled ability to trace digital breadcrumbs, was meticulously mapping the network of fake accounts and propaganda sites. Lena, with her keen understanding of human psychology and cultural nuances, was analyzing the language patterns, identifying the emotional triggers designed to manipulate public opinion. Mac was fortifying our defenses, ensuring that our counter-messaging efforts couldn't be compromised. We were fighting a war on multiple fronts, a silent struggle against an enemy that sought to exploit fear and ignorance. During one particularly intense briefing, as we were dissecting the latest intelligence, a subtle detail caught my eye on Eris's screen. A small, almost imperceptible digital signature embedded deep within one of the disinformation packets. It was a signature I recognized, a faint echo from a past operation, a ghost in the machine that sent a shiver down my spine. "Eris," I said, my voice cutting through the focused chatter. "Zoom in on that encryption key, the one in the metadata. Does that look familiar to you?" He complied, his fingers flying across the keyboard, and as the image magnified, A collective gasp rippled through the room. It was a unique, highly complex algorithm, a digital fingerprint belonging to a shadowy group known as the Collective, a network of rogue operatives and disillusioned former intelligence agents I had encountered years ago, before my disappearance. They were driven by a nihilistic desire to expose what they perceived as global corruption, often resorting to extreme and dangerous methods. The revelation changed everything. This wasn't just a random disinformation campaign. It was a targeted attack, orchestrated by individuals with a deep understanding of intelligence operations, individuals who knew how to exploit vulnerabilities at a systemic level. The stakes, already high, had just skyrocketed. The Collective operates with extreme prejudice, I explained to my team, my voice grave. They don't just want to disrupt, they want to dismantle, and they are notoriously difficult to track. A quiet determination settled over the room. This was personal, not just for me, but for the principles we stood for. We were no longer just defending public health. We were confronting a ghost from my past, a threat that had once almost consumed me. The memory of my previous encounter with them, a harrowing operation that had pushed me to my limits, flashed through my mind, a stark reminder of their ruthlessness. As we delved deeper, Lena uncovered a disturbing pattern. The Collective wasn't just spreading false information. They were subtly manipulating financial markets, creating artificial volatility that could lead to widespread economic instability. Their ultimate goal, it seemed, was to trigger a cascade of global crises, believing that from the ashes of chaos, a new, purer world order would emerge. It was a dangerous, almost messianic ideology, fueled by a twisted sense of justice. They're using the disinformation as a smokescreen, Lena explained, her brow furrowed in concentration. While everyone is focused on the public health narrative, they're quietly siphoning off billions, destabilizing economies, and creating a power vacuum. The sheer audacity of their plan was breathtaking, a testament to their cunning and their complete disregard for human suffering. We were facing an enemy that saw the world as a chessboard, and human lives as mere pawns. The pressure mounted with each passing hour. We knew we had to act swiftly, decisively, before their plan reached its critical mass. The architect, ever the stoic, called me into his private office. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes held a familiar intensity. "Echo," he began, his voice low. "This operation requires a delicate touch. The Collective has deep roots, and any overt move could trigger a wider, more catastrophic response. We need to infiltrate their core network, identify their key players, and dismantle their operation from the inside out. And you, with your unique history with them, are the only one who can lead this." He handed me a secure tablet, displaying a complex schematic of the Collective's suspected infrastructure. "It's a ghost hunt, Echo. Are you ready to face your past, and perhaps a part of yourself you thought you'd buried?" The question hung in the air, heavy with unspoken implications. I looked at the schematic, then back at the architect, a quiet resolve hardening my gaze. My past had tried to erase me. Now it was time to confront it, and ensure that no one else would suffer the same fate. The weight of the architect's words settled upon me, a familiar cloak of responsibility that I had long since learned to wear with a quiet strength. A ghost hunt, he had called it, and the phrase resonated deep within my core. For so long I had been the ghost, unseen and unheard by those who should have cherished me. Now I was the hunter, pursuing the very specters of my past, those who sought to weaponize chaos and profit from the shadows. The schematic on the tablet pulsed with an intricate network of nodes and pathways, a digital labyrinth designed to conceal and confuse. It was a challenge that demanded not just technical prowess, but a profound understanding of human nature, of the motivations that drive individuals to such extreme lengths. This wasn't just about code, it was about ideology, about the dangerous allure of power, and the seductive promise of a world remade, no matter the cost. My first step was to immerse myself in their world, to understand their philosophy, their grievances, their twisted sense of justice. I spent days poring over their manifestos, their encrypted communications, their carefully curated propaganda. It was a chilling journey into the minds of those who believed they were saviors, even as they sowed destruction. They saw themselves as liberators, exposing the hypocrisy of governments and corporations, but their methods were those of terrorists, their actions indiscriminate. They were brilliant, yes, but their brilliance was corrupted by a profound cynicism, a belief that the only way to build anew was to first tear everything down. I had to think like them, anticipate their moves, understand their vulnerabilities, not just as a network, but as a collective of individuals, each with their own fears and desires. It was a dangerous dance, a psychological tightrope walk that required me to delve into the very darkness I sought to combat. The plan I devised was audacious, risky, and deeply personal. It involved a deep cover infiltration, not into their digital network, but into their physical operations, a move that would put me directly in harm's way. "We need to plant a digital Trojan horse," I explained to my team, gathered around the holographic map, their faces a mixture of apprehension and unwavering trust. "Something that appears to be a valuable asset, a new recruit with unique skills, but is actually a backdoor into their command structure." Eris immediately began designing the digital payload, a masterpiece of stealth and deception. Lena started crafting the psychological profile of my cover identity, a disillusioned former government analyst with a vendetta against the system. Mac began preparing the physical equipment, ensuring that every piece of technology I carried was untraceable, secure, and capable of transmitting vital intelligence without detection. The cover story was meticulously crafted, drawing on elements of my own past, but twisted and distorted to fit the narrative of a disillusioned operative. "My name is Anya Petrova," I rehearsed, my voice taking on a subtle new cadence, a hint of world weariness. "I've seen too much, done too much, for a system that doesn't care. I'm looking for a new path, a new purpose, a way to truly make a difference." It was a dangerous game of mirrors, reflecting back a distorted image of myself, hoping they would see what they wanted to see, not the truth. The training was intense, pushing my physical and mental limits. I honed my combat skills, refreshed my knowledge of various languages and dialects, and practiced the art of deception until it felt like a second skin. Every gesture, every facial expression, every subtle inflection of my voice had to be perfect, convincing. My life, and the success of the mission, depended on it. The day of my insertion arrived with a quiet intensity. I stood before the architect, dressed in civilian clothes, a small, discreet comms device nestled in my ear. "Remember, Echo," he said, his voice firm. "You are not alone. We are with you every step of the way. Your safety is paramount." I nodded, a silent acknowledgement of the trust placed in me. As I walked out of the secure facility and into the bustling anonymity of the city, I felt a strange mix of apprehension and exhilaration. It was like stepping onto a stage, knowing that the performance of a lifetime was about to begin, with stakes far higher than any audience could ever imagine. My first contact was in a dimly lit cafe, a seemingly innocuous meeting that would determine whether my cover held, whether I would be accepted into the heart of the collective. The man who approached me, his eyes sharp and assessing, was known only as the Weaver, a key recruiter for the organization. Our conversation was a delicate dance of veiled questions and carefully constructed answers, each word a potential trap, each silence a test. He probed my motivations, my skills, my supposed disillusionment. I spoke of the system's betrayals, of the emptiness of working for an organization that valued power over people, echoing sentiments I knew resonated deeply with the collective's ideology. I spoke with a conviction that was genuine, drawing on the very real pain of my past, the feeling of being unseen and undervalued. He listened intently, his gaze unwavering, searching for any hint of falsehood. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, a faint, almost imperceptible smile touched his lips. "Welcome, Anya," he said, his voice a low rumble. "The collective has been waiting for someone like you." A chill ran down my spine, a mix of triumph and dread. I was in. The ghost had entered the house, but the true hunt was just beginning. What secrets would I uncover within their ranks? And how far would I have to go to bring them down, without losing myself in the process? My journey has been one of profound transformation, from being a ghost in my own life to becoming a force for change in the shadows. It's a path paved with unexpected turns, deep betrayals, and the quiet strength of finding my true purpose. If any part of this story has resonated with you, if it's stirred something within your spirit, I truly hope you'll consider joining our community. This isn't just a channel. It's a space where we explore the depths of human experience, where every story is valued, and where your voice truly matters. So, if you haven't already, please take a moment to subscribe. It helps us continue to bring these powerful narratives to life, and it means the world to me. And more than that, I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to navigate a difficult path, finding your own way when others tried to define you? What lessons have you learned about resilience, about purpose, about finding your true self? Share your stories in the comments below. Your experiences are incredibly valuable, and they inspire us all. And if there are other emotional journeys, other untold tales of courage and transformation you'd like us to explore, please let me know. Your suggestions help shape the future of our channel, making it a place where we can all connect and grow together. Thank you for being here, for listening, and for being a part of this incredible community. The initial weeks within the collective were a masterclass in psychological warfare, a constant tightrope walk between maintaining my cover and gathering the intelligence that could dismantle them. I was Anya Petrova, the disillusioned analyst, and every interaction was a performance, every word a calculated move in a high-stakes game. The Weaver, my initial contact, became my primary handler within their ranks, a man whose charisma was as unsettling as his conviction. He spoke of a world teetering on the brink, corrupted by unseen forces, and presented the collective as the only true path to liberation. His words, though twisted, held a seductive power, preying on genuine grievances and anxieties that resonated with many. I observed the other members, a diverse group of brilliant but broken individuals, each drawn to the collective for their own reasons. Some seeking revenge, others a sense of belonging, all united by a shared disillusionment with the existing order. My role quickly evolved. My supposed expertise in data analysis and network infiltration was put to the test, as I was tasked with contributing to their ongoing disinformation campaigns. This was a dangerous double-edged sword. On one hand, it gave me direct access to their methods, their targets, and their internal communications. On the other, it forced me to actively participate in the very acts I was trying to prevent, albeit with a carefully constructed layer of plausible deniability and subtle sabotage. I would subtly misdirect data, introduce minor, undetectable errors into their algorithms, or delay critical information, all while maintaining the facade of a dedicated, if somewhat cynical, operative. It was a constant mental chess match, ensuring my actions were just effective enough to maintain their trust, but never so effective as to cause irreversible damage. The pressure was immense, a constant hum beneath my skin. One evening, the Weaver approached me with a new assignment, his eyes gleaming with an almost fanatical zeal. "Anya," he began, his voice low and conspiratorial, "we have a new target, a truly significant one. A global financial institution, deeply entrenched in the very system we seek to dismantle. We believe they are at the heart of the economic manipulation we've been exposing." He laid out a complex plan for a coordinated cyber attack, designed not just to disrupt, but to utterly cripple their operations, triggering a cascade effect across the global economy. The scale of it was breathtaking, terrifying. This was the critical mass Lena had warned about, the point of no return. My heart pounded in my chest, but my face remained impassive. This was it. This was the opportunity I had been waiting for, the chance to penetrate their deepest layers and expose their true intentions. I spent days preparing for the attack, meticulously studying their network architecture, identifying vulnerabilities, and mapping out potential entry points. But my real work was happening in the shadows, communicating with Eris and Mac through a secure one-way burst transmission channel, feeding them fragments of information, encrypted data packets that, when pieced together, would reveal the full scope of the collective's plan. It was a race against time, a desperate scramble to provide my team with enough intelligence to build a counter-strategy without raising any suspicion within the collective. Every keystroke was a risk, every moment a potential exposure. I felt the weight of millions of lives resting on my shoulders, the silent burden of a world unaware of the precipice it stood upon. The night of the attack arrived, a storm brewing both outside and within the secure, undisclosed location where the collective's core operations were housed. The air was electric with tension, a mixture of anticipation and grim determination. I sat at my terminal, surrounded by other operatives, their faces illuminated by the cold glow of their screens, their fingers flying across keyboards. The Weaver stood at the head of the room, directing the symphony of destruction, his voice a calm, chilling presence. As the countdown began, I initiated my part of the attack, a series of commands designed to appear as a legitimate infiltration, but which secretly opened a backdoor for my own team, a digital Trojan horse that would allow them to observe, to analyze, and eventually, to neutralize. It was a terrifying moment, a leap of faith into the digital abyss, hoping that my carefully laid plans would hold. As the attack unfolded, I could feel the subtle shifts in the network, the digital skirmishes happening just beneath the surface of what the collective believed was their triumph. My heart was a drum against my ribs, but my mind was clear, focused, guiding my hands across the keyboard with a precision born of years of training. I was a ghost in two worlds now, a phantom within the collective, and an unseen hand guiding my true team. The Weaver, oblivious to the deeper game being played, clapped me on the shoulder, a rare gesture of approval. "Excellent work, Anya," he murmured, a satisfied smile spreading across his face. "The system is crumbling," but I knew better. The system was not crumbling. It was being meticulously observed, its weaknesses catalogued, its architects exposed. The real battle was just beginning, and I was at its very heart, a silent warrior in a war of shadows and light. What would happen when the collective realized they had been infiltrated? And how would I escape the web I had so carefully woven around myself? The digital storm raged around me, a symphony of code and chaos, as the collective's attack on the global financial institution reached its crescendo. From my vantage point within their inner sanctum, I could see the lines of data flowing, the algorithms executing, the carefully constructed plan unfolding with terrifying precision. Yet, beneath that surface, I also felt the subtle countercurrents, the invisible ripples of my own team's intervention. Eris, Mac, and Lena were working in tandem, a silent force mirroring my every move, analyzing the vulnerabilities I exposed, and preparing their own decisive strike. It was a dance of shadows, a delicate balance between allowing enough of the collective's attack to proceed to maintain my cover, and ensuring that the ultimate damage would be contained, reversible. My heart hammered against my ribs, a constant reminder of the immense stakes, but my hands moved with a practiced calm, each keystroke a deliberate act of deception and intelligence gathering. The Weaver, his face illuminated by the glow of the monitors, moved through the room like a conductor, his voice a low, fervent chant, urging his operatives onward. He believed he was witnessing the dawn of a new era, the unraveling of a corrupt system, and his conviction was almost palpable. He paused beside my terminal, his gaze sweeping over my screen, a flicker of satisfaction in his eyes. "Anya, your contribution has been invaluable," he murmured, his voice a low rumble of approval. "The initial breaches are holding. We are seeing significant market volatility, just as predicted." I offered a tight, professional smile, a mask of grim determination. "Good," I replied, my voice carefully modulated to convey a sense of weary triumph. "Let's ensure this disruption is permanent." The lie tasted bitter on my tongue, but it was a necessary sacrifice, a small price to pay for the greater good, for the protection of countless innocent lives. As the hours stretched on, the digital battlefield intensified. My team, guided by the intelligence I was feeding them, began to subtly redirect the most damaging aspects of the collective's attack, shunting them into isolated, contained environments where they could be neutralized without public knowledge. It was like diverting a raging river, channeling its destructive force into a controlled basin. I could almost hear Eris's quiet genius at work, Mac's steady hand on the infrastructure, and Lena's insightful analysis guiding their every move. The communication was sparse, a series of encrypted pings and coded messages, but the understanding between us was absolute, a bond forged in shared purpose and unwavering trust. I was the eyes and ears on the inside, and they were the unseen hand, orchestrating the defense from the outside. The tension in the room was almost unbearable, a palpable weight that pressed down on everyone. Then, a new alert flashed across my internal comms, a direct, urgent message from the architect. "Echo, we have identified the primary command server. It's located in a secure, undisclosed facility in the old industrial district. We need physical access to plant a permanent backdoor, to fully dismantle their core operations. You are our only way in." My blood ran cold. Physical infiltration. It was the most dangerous part of the plan, the point where my digital ghost identity would have to manifest in the tangible world, where the risks were exponentially higher. I glanced at the Weaver, still engrossed in the unfolding cyber attack, his back to me. This was my moment, the critical juncture where I would have to make a move that could expose everything. My heart pounded, a frantic drumbeat against the silence of my resolve. I began to subtly shift my focus, creating a plausible reason to leave my terminal. "The network is showing some unexpected resistance in Sector Gamma," I announced, my voice carrying a hint of concern. "I need to physically access the auxiliary server room to run a diagnostic. It's a localized issue, but it could compromise our progress, if not addressed immediately." The Weaver, momentarily distracted by the broader success of the attack, waved a dismissive hand. "Go, Anya. Don't let anything jeopardize this." His casual dismissal was my window, my opportunity. I moved with a practiced calm, gathering a few pieces of equipment, my mind racing, already mapping out the quickest, most discreet route to the auxiliary server room, which I knew led to a rarely used service tunnel. The service tunnel was dark, damp, and smelled of old concrete and forgotten secrets. My small flashlight cut a narrow beam through the oppressive gloom, revealing a labyrinth of pipes and wires. This was the underbelly of the collective's operation, the hidden pathways they believed were secure. My comms device crackled to life, the architect's voice a calm presence in my ear. "Echo, we have eyes on you. Proceed with extreme caution. The target server is directly above your current position, accessible via a maintenance shaft." I moved swiftly, silently, my senses heightened. Every shadow a potential threat, every creak of metal a warning. This was the moment of truth, the culmination of months of planning, of living a double life. I was no longer just Anya, the disillusioned operative, or Amelia, the overlooked wife. I was Echo, the ghost hunter, and I was about to strike at the very heart of the darkness. What awaited me at the end of this dark tunnel? And would I emerge from the shadows, or be consumed by them? The maintenance shaft was a vertical tunnel of cold, greasy metal, echoing with the distant hum of machinery. I ascended slowly, carefully, each handhold and foothold tested before I committed my weight. The air grew warmer as I climbed, carrying the faint scent of electronics and stale coffee, a clear indication that I was nearing the collective's core operations. My heart was a steady drum against my ribs, a rhythm of focused adrenaline, but my mind remained clear, processing every detail, every potential threat. The architect's voice was a calm, reassuring presence in my ear, guiding me through the labyrinthine structure. "Echo, you're directly beneath the server room. There's a vent access panel approximately 3 meters above you, on the east wall." His precision was a comfort, a reminder that I was not truly alone in this dangerous endeavor. Reaching the vent access panel required a precarious stretch, my fingers brushing against the cold metal before I found purchase. With a soft click, the panel gave way, revealing a narrow crawl space, dark and dusty. I slid through, my movements fluid and silent, a shadow dissolving into the deeper shadows. The crawl space opened directly into the ceiling plenum above the collective's main server room. Below me, through the perforated ceiling tiles, I could see the blinking lights of countless servers, the nerve center of their global operation. The room was empty, a fortunate stroke of luck, as most of the operatives were still focused on the ongoing cyber attack in the adjacent command center. This was my window, my precious, fleeting opportunity to plant the backdoor, to truly dismantle their insidious network from within. I located the primary command server, a hulking black monolith humming with power, its status lights glowing a malevolent red. With practiced ease, I lowered myself through a strategically chosen ceiling tile, landing softly on the cool, tiled floor. The silence in the room was profound, broken only by the whirring of the server fans, a mechanical breath that seemed to fill the space. My hands moved with speed and precision, connecting a small, specialized device to a hidden port on the server. This device, a marvel of engineering designed by Mac, was not just a backdoor. It was a digital anchor, a permanent link that would allow my team to monitor, control, and ultimately neutralize the collective's entire infrastructure, even if they tried to rebuild. It was the ultimate checkmate, a silent victory in a war of unseen forces. As the device initiated its upload, a small, almost imperceptible green light blinking to confirm its operation, I heard a faint sound from the hallway outside. Footsteps. My blood ran cold. Someone was coming. I froze, pressing myself against the cold metal of the server rack. My breath held, my senses straining. The footsteps grew louder, closer, accompanied by a low murmur of voices. There was no time to retreat, no time to hide. I was exposed, caught in the act. My mind raced, frantically searching for an escape, a plausible explanation, anything to maintain my cover. The green light on the device continued to blink, a silent countdown to my potential exposure. This was the moment of truth, the precipice of discovery. The door to the server room swung open, revealing two of the collective's security personnel, burly men with grim expressions, their eyes sweeping the room. My heart pounded, a frantic drum against my ribs, but my face remained a mask of professional calm. I quickly pulled out a small, legitimate diagnostic tool from my pocket, pretending to be engrossed in a complex network issue. "Everything all right, Anya?" One of them grunted, his gaze lingering on me, a flicker of suspicion in his eyes. I straightened up, feigning annoyance. "Just a persistent anomaly in the Sector Gamma routing," I replied, my voice steady, injecting a hint of frustration into my tone. "Trying to isolate the source before it impacts the main operation. The Weaver sent me." The mention of the Weaver's name, their leader, was a calculated risk, a gamble that paid off. The security personnel exchanged a glance, their suspicion momentarily appeased by the authority of the Weaver's name. "Right," the other one said, his voice gruff. "Just make it quick. Things are getting intense out there." They lingered for a moment longer, their eyes still scanning the room, before finally turning and leaving, the door swinging shut behind them with a soft click. I let out a slow, silent breath I hadn't realized I was holding, my body trembling slightly with the aftershock of adrenaline. The green light on the device was now solid, its mission complete. The back door was planted. I had done it. But the escape was still ahead, and the true reckoning for the collective was yet to come. What would happen when they discovered the ghost in their machine? And how would I navigate the treacherous path out of their lair, back to the world where my true identity awaited? With the back door firmly planted, a silent digital anchor now tethering the collective's entire operation to our control, my immediate priority shifted from infiltration to extraction. The air in the server room, once thick with the hum of machinery, now felt charged with a new kind of tension, a silent countdown to discovery. I knew it was only a matter of time before their sophisticated monitoring systems detected the anomaly, before they realized they had been compromised. My comms device crackled, the architect's voice a low, urgent whisper. "Echo, the window is closing. We're seeing increased activity on their internal network. You need to move now." His words were a stark reminder of the precariousness of my situation, the thin line I walked between success and catastrophic exposure. I retraced my steps, moving with a heightened sense of urgency, yet maintaining the practiced calm that had become my second nature. Back through the narrow crawl space, the dust motes dancing in the beam of my flashlight, then down the cold, greasy maintenance shaft. Every creak of metal, every distant sound, sent a jolt of adrenaline through me. My mind raced, calculating risks, anticipating potential encounters. I knew the collective's facility layout intimately now. Every hidden passage, every blind spot, every security camera's blind arc. This knowledge, hard-won through weeks of observation and meticulous planning, was my greatest asset. My invisible shield in a hostile environment. The ghost was making her exit, leaving behind a ticking time bomb. As I emerged from the service tunnel and into the auxiliary server room, I could hear the rising crescendo of voices from the main command center. The cyber attack, which had been so meticulously orchestrated by the collective, was now encountering significant, unexpected resistance. My team, working in concert with global cybersecurity agencies, was actively neutralizing their efforts, containing the damage, and subtly turning their own weapons against them. The chaos I heard was a symphony of their unraveling, a testament to the effectiveness of our counter-operation. It was a moment of grim satisfaction, knowing that their destructive ambitions were being thwarted, their carefully constructed house of cards beginning to collapse. I made my way back to my terminal in the command center, feigning exhaustion and frustration. The room was a hive of frantic activity, the previous smug confidence replaced by a growing sense of panic. Operatives shouted commands, their faces pale, their fingers flying across keyboards in a desperate attempt to regain control. The Weaver, his face now etched with a mixture of confusion and fury, was barking orders, his earlier zeal replaced by a chilling desperation. "What's happening?" he roared, his voice echoing through the room. "Why are our access points failing? Who is doing this?" His eyes, once so confident, now darted around the room, searching for answers, for a scapegoat. I kept my head down, my expression carefully neutral, pretending to be engrossed in my own failing attempts to fix the problem. "It's like they anticipated our every move," one operative stammered, his voice trembling. "Every vulnerability we exploited, they've patched. Every backdoor we opened, they've sealed." The realization was slowly dawning on them, a terrifying truth that was beginning to seep into their collective consciousness. They were not the hunters. They were the hunted. The Weaver's gaze swept across the room, his eyes narrowing, a dangerous glint appearing in their depths. He was looking for a leak, a traitor, someone who could have compromised their operation. My heart pounded, a silent warning, but I maintained my composure, my professional mask firmly in place. I was Anya, the frustrated operative, just another victim of the unforeseen counterattack. Suddenly, the Weaver's eyes locked onto me, a cold, piercing stare that seemed to strip away my carefully constructed facade. "Anya," he said, his voice dangerously quiet, "you were in the auxiliary server room. Did you notice anything unusual? Any anomalies?" His question hung in the air, heavy with suspicion, a direct challenge to my cover. This was the moment of ultimate peril, the precipice of exposure. My mind raced, searching for the perfect response. A lie that would hold, a truth that would deceive. The entire mission, my life, hung in the balance, suspended on the edge of a single, carefully chosen word. What would I say to deflect his suspicion? And how would I escape the tightening net of the collective's paranoia? The Weaver's gaze was a physical weight, pressing down on me, searching for any flicker of deceit. The silence in the command center, already thick with panic, stretched taut, amplifying the tension of his question. My mind, however, was a whirlwind of calculated responses, sifting through possibilities, weighing risks. I met his stare with a carefully constructed expression of weary frustration, a subtle hint of indignation at being singled out amidst the chaos. "Unusual?" I repeated, my voice laced with a controlled edge, as if offended by the implication. "The entire network is under attack, Weaver. What exactly would constitute unusual in this digital war zone? I was trying to patch a critical vulnerability in Sector Gamma, as instructed, but it seems our entire infrastructure is compromised." I gestured vaguely towards my screen, where I had deliberately left a series of error messages displayed, a convincing tableau of a struggling operative. My response, delivered with a blend of professional exasperation and a touch of genuine concern for the failing operation, seemed to momentarily disarm him. He narrowed his eyes, still scrutinizing me, but the intensity of his suspicion seemed to waver, replaced by a more generalized frustration. "Compromised by whom?" he growled, turning his attention back to the larger crisis unfolding on the main display. Who could have anticipated our moves with such precision? His question hung in the air, a rhetorical lament, but it was also an opportunity. I seized it, planting a seed of doubt, a subtle misdirection that would further aid my team's efforts. "It feels like an inside job, doesn't it?" I murmured, just loud enough for him to hear, my voice low and conspiratorial. Someone with intimate knowledge of our protocols, our vulnerabilities, someone who knew exactly where to strike. The Weaver's head snapped back towards me, his eyes now blazing with a new dangerous fury. "An inside job?" he hissed, the idea clearly taking root in his paranoid mind. "Are you suggesting we have a traitor among us, Anya?" His gaze swept across the room, now openly suspicious of everyone, not just me. This was precisely the chaos I needed, the internal discord that would further distract them from the true source of their unraveling. "I'm merely stating the obvious, Weaver," I replied, shrugging slightly, feigning a detached analysis. "The sophistication of this counterattack, the way it mirrors our own tactics. It speaks of deep intelligence, not just a random external force. My words were a carefully placed wedge, driving a deeper rift of distrust within the collective, turning them against each other. As the internal paranoia began to fester, fueled by my subtle suggestions, the architect's voice returned to my ear, urgent and precise. Echo, they're initiating a full system purge. They're trying to wipe all data, including our back door. You need to extract, now. We're sending a team to your location. Get to the rooftop access point, immediately. A full system purge. That meant they were desperate, willing to destroy everything to prevent their secrets from being exposed. It also meant my window for escape was rapidly closing. I glanced at the Weaver, who was now embroiled in a heated argument with another operative, accusing him of negligence. This was my chance. I began to subtly pack my minimal equipment, making it appear as though I was preparing for a more intensive diagnostic. I need to get a clearer signal from the satellite uplink on the roof, I announced, raising my voice slightly to be heard over the rising clamor. If we can't get real-time intel, we're flying blind. Without waiting for a response, I moved swiftly towards a rarely used service elevator, my heart pounding with a mixture of fear and exhilaration. The Weaver, consumed by the internal strife and the collapsing operation, barely registered my departure. The elevator door slid shut with a soft hiss, sealing me away from the chaos, carrying me upwards towards an uncertain escape. The rooftop was a desolate expanse of concrete and metal, whipped by a cold, biting wind. The city lights twinkled below, a distant, indifferent tapestry. I scanned the sky, my eyes searching for the familiar silhouette of our extraction craft. My comms crackled again. Echo, we have visual. ETA 2 minutes. Stay low. I crouched behind a large ventilation unit, the cold metal a stark contrast to the burning intensity within me. The sounds of sirens, faint at first, began to grow louder in the distance, a clear indication that the authorities, alerted by my team, were closing in on the collective's facility. The trap was sprung, the net was closing, and I, the ghost, was about to disappear once more, leaving behind a legacy of justice and a profound sense of peace. What would become of the collective, caught in the unforgiving machinery of the law? And what new chapter awaited me, now that this harrowing mission was finally drawing to a close? The roar of the approaching helicopter grew louder, cutting through the wail of distant sirens, a symphony of rescue and reckoning. I watched as its dark silhouette materialized against the bruised twilight sky, a beacon of safety in a world that had, for weeks, been defined by shadows and deception. The wind whipped around me, tugging at my clothes, but I remained low, my eyes fixed on the descending craft. My comms device crackled one last time, the architect's voice, usually so stoic, carrying a hint of relief. Echo, extraction is confirmed. Good work. We'll handle the rest. His words were a quiet absolution, a recognition of the immense risks I had taken, and the profound impact of my actions. I felt a wave of exhaustion wash over me, but it was quickly replaced by a deep, abiding sense of peace, a quiet triumph that settled deep within my soul. As the helicopter touched down lightly on the rooftop, its rotors kicking up a storm of dust and debris, 2 figures emerged, moving with the practiced efficiency of trained professionals. They were members of my team, familiar faces whose presence was a comforting anchor in the swirling chaos. One of them, a tall, silent operative I knew as Shadow, extended a hand, pulling me swiftly into the safety of the craft. As the doors slid shut, sealing me inside, I took one last look at the building below, at the flashing lights of the arriving police cars, at the unfolding drama that was the culmination of the collective's downfall. I had walked into their lair as a ghost, and I was leaving as a ghost, but this time, I was carrying the weight of justice, not the burden of invisibility. The flight back to the secure facility was a blur of quiet debriefing and much-needed rest. My team, Eris, Lena, and Mac, greeted me with genuine warmth, their relief palpable. There were no grand celebrations, no triumphant speeches, just a shared understanding of the immense victory we had achieved, a quiet acknowledgement of the lives we had protected. The architect, his expression as unreadable as ever, simply nodded, a rare, almost imperceptible smile gracing his lips. The collective's network is fully compromised, he informed me, his voice low. Their leadership has been apprehended, and their disinformation campaigns are being systematically dismantled. The financial markets are stabilizing. You saved countless lives, Echo. His words, simple and direct, were more meaningful than any medal or public accolade. They were the true currency of my world, the validation I had once desperately sought from others, now earned through my own unwavering purpose. In the weeks that followed, the world slowly began to heal from the wounds inflicted by the collective. The disinformation campaigns faded, replaced by accurate information. The financial markets recovered, averting a global crisis. The news reports, though never mentioning my name or the true nature of our operation, spoke of a coordinated international effort, a triumph of intelligence and cooperation. I found myself returning to the quiet rhythm of my life as section chief, leading my team, continuing our silent vigil against the unseen threats. The Vance Legacy Grant for Ethical Innovation continued to flourish, nurturing young minds who were committed to using technology for good, a living testament to my grandmother's enduring spirit and my own transformed legacy. It was a powerful reminder that even from the ashes of betrayal, something beautiful and meaningful could rise. My journey had been one of profound transformation, a spiritual odyssey from the depths of invisibility to the heights of purpose. I had learned that true strength isn't about how loudly you can demand recognition, but about how quietly you can build, how resiliently you can rise, and how authentically you can live. The pain of Arthur and Eleanor's betrayal, once a raw wound, had become a distant scar, a reminder of the lessons learned, but no longer a source of anguish. Their fate, caught in the unforgiving machinery of the law, was a consequence of their own choices, a path they had forged with greed and deceit. I had freed myself from their emotional hold, from the need for their approval, and in doing so, I had found a freedom far more valuable than any inheritance. Sometimes late at night, when the city lights twinkled below my office window, I would think of my grandmother, her gentle smile, her unwavering belief in me. She had seen my worth long before I did, long before the world of shadows and light revealed my true purpose. My husband thought I was dead, and in a way, the old Amelia Vance did die that day in the courtroom. But from her ashes, Echo was born, a woman forged in fire, defined by purpose, and guided by a profound sense of justice. My legacy would not be defined by their choices, by their greed, or their betrayal. It would be defined by mine, by the positive impact I chose to create, by the lives I protected, and by the quiet strength of a ghost who finally found her voice. What other stories of transformation, of resilience, of finding one's true path, lie hidden in the quiet corners of the world waiting to be told?